In her article, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, a Black Feminist Critique of Antidiscrimination Doctrine, Feminist Theory and Antiracist Politics, Kimberle Crenshaw introduces the concept of intersectionality to highlight how traditional frameworks in anti-discrimination law, feminist theory, and anti-racist politics often overlook the unique experiences of Black women. She argues that these frameworks tend to treat race and gender as mutually exclusive categories, thereby marginalizing those who exist at the intersection of multiple identities. Crenshaw seeks to demonstrate the necessity of considering intersecting identities to understand and address the specific challenges faced by Black women. Critique of Antidiscrimination Doctrine. Crenshaw critiques the anti-discrimination doctrine for its failure to adequately address the experiences of individuals who face discrimination on multiple fronts. She explains that the legal system often requires plaintiffs to prove discrimination based on a single-axis framework, either race or gender, which fails to capture the compound nature of discrimination faced by Black women. This single-axis approach results in the marginalization of Black women's unique experiences within legal discourses. Case studies to illustrate intersectionality. To illustrate her point, Crenshaw presents several legal case studies where Black women plaintiffs were unable to obtain justice because their claims did not fit neatly into the existing categories of anti-discrimination law. For instance, in Degrafenride v. General Motors, Black women's claims of compounded race and gender discrimination were dismissed because the court could not see them as distinct from claims of either Black men or white women. These cases demonstrate how the intersectional nature of Black women's experiences is often rendered invisible. Feminist theory and Black women. Crenshaw critiques mainstream feminist theory for its tendency to prioritize the experiences of white women, thereby neglecting the specific issues faced by women of color. She argues that feminist theory often fails to account for the ways in which race and gender intersect to shape the lives of Black women uniquely. By focusing predominantly on the experiences of white women, feminist movements risk reinforcing the marginalization of Black women and other women of color. Anti-racist politics and gender. Similarly, Crenshaw examines how anti-racist politics often prioritize the experiences of Black men, sidelining the gender dimensions of racism. She argues that anti-racist movements must also consider the ways in which racism impacts Black women differently from Black men. Ignoring gender within anti-racist politics perpetuates the invisibility of Black women and undermines the effectiveness of these movements in addressing all forms of racial injustice. The need for an intersectional approach. Crenshaw advocates for an intersectional approach that recognizes the interconnectedness of race, gender, and other social categories. She asserts that understanding and addressing the unique challenges faced by Black women requires an analytical framework that considers multiple, intersecting identities. Intersectionality provides a more comprehensive and inclusive lens through which to examine and combat discrimination and oppression. Implications for legal and social policy. Crenshaw discusses the implications of intersectionality for legal and social policy. She argues that laws and policies must be designed to address the compound and intersecting nature of discrimination. This includes recognizing and remedying the specific ways in which Black women and other marginalized groups experience injustice. Intersectional policies would ensure that all individuals, regardless of their intersecting identities, receive adequate protection and support. Building inclusive movements. Crenshaw calls for feminist and anti-racist movements to embrace intersectionality and build more inclusive coalitions. She emphasizes the importance of recognizing and valuing the diverse experiences within these movements to create a more unified and effective struggle against oppression. By centering the voices and experiences of Black women and other marginalized groups, these movements can better address the full spectrum of injustice. Critique of identity politics. Crenshaw also critiques the limitations of identity politics when it fails to account for intersecting identities. While identity politics can empower marginalized groups by affirming their specific experiences, it can also lead to the exclusion of those who do not fit neatly into single identity categories. Crenshaw argues for a more nuanced understanding of identity that acknowledges the complexity of intersecting social categories and the need for solidarity across different groups. Crenshaw calls for a paradigm shift in how we understand and address discrimination. She urges scholars, activists, and policymakers to adopt an intersectional approach that fully recognizes the complexity of individuals' identities and experiences. By demarginalizing the intersection of race and sex, society can move towards more equitable and effective strategies for combating discrimination and achieving social justice. Crenshaw's work serves as a foundational critique that challenges us to rethink traditional frameworks and to strive for a more inclusive and comprehensive approach to social justice.